Welcome everyone to the Pipeline Power Podcast, powered by RevSurge AI. This is where we dig into real stories behind real business, what's working, what is not, and what is next. So we're joined here by Hans. He's the co-founder of Deliberately AI. Hans, thanks for being here.
Hey, Alex, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick this off by just telling us a little bit about what you guys do.
Absolutely. We are a platform that we built and sell into small family law firms currently, and in longer term, probably into law firms across the entire set of personal law.
So when you say kind of you sell them, what solution or kind of what problem are you guys fixing for them?
Yeah. Well, I give you a little bit of backstory. The origin of this idea actually stems out of my own experience. I went through a divorce about 8 years ago, and I've always been a product person, a software technology person, and I've worked in every imaginable industry with the exception of law. What I experienced while going through my divorce was pretty shocking. The family law industry is, pretty behind the technology curve, and for that reason, the whole process is fairly inefficient and oftentimes more painful than it needs to be. The problem that I'm focused on specifically has to do with the collection, the management, and leveraging of the facts information related to a particular client case. So in the case of family law, it's typically a divorce. And if you've been through this process before, you know that it involves documenting every aspect of your life, So you can imagine most people have been married for years, sometimes decades. You've got massive amounts of accounts, assets, debts, properties, children. Your life consists of has to be documented, and that comes in the form of tax returns, account statements, many narratives that are being passed and forth between you and attorney to describe the situation that you're in. And if you look at the industry today, most of that information gets conveyed to the attorney via email, or maybe if they have a technology stack, it's often something like Dropbox. And uh, it's very hard. It's hard for the client to be sending all that information back and forth in that way. And I would say it's nearly impossible for the attorney to consume it. Not only are they working on this case with you, but most of the time they've got 30, 40, 50 other cases going at the same time. So just imagine, my case involves hundreds or possibly thousands of documents times the number of cases the attorney has. They're lost in a sea of scattered documentation, and the cognitive burden that creates for the attorney is very, very heavy. And quite frankly, there's no way that they can effectively leverage all of that information. They kind of do their best to skim it and use what they can, but it could be a lot better. They could be a lot more efficient, more effective, and they could do that without having to carry the load that they do.
Got it. So without being so technical and going into like exactly on the behind the scenes, like a 30,000 foot overview, how do you guys fix that problem for them exactly?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Well, it starts with gathering up all the information, that the client has to convey to the attorney.
Okay.
We started by building a client-facing software experience, and it consists primarily of an AI agent. And that AI agent has awareness of the attorney, the questions that the attorney asks. It has a awareness of what is needed for a particular type of case, like a divorce. It has awareness of the law. And when the attorney extends this platform to their client, the client is onboards into the platform and is taken through a very organic conversation by this AI agent, much in the same way that the attorney used to have to do this on the phone or in a series of meetings. And as the AI agent starts asking questions, it gets answers to those questions. It becomes better and better informed about which questions to ask next. And it dives deeper into those areas that need more info. And as it goes, it prompts the user to provide the supporting documentation. So rather than the attorney having to send many, many dozens of emails back and forth, this AI agent just does it for them. And it could do it during the nights and weekends, the times at which the client often is working on these things, because the client typically has a day job and things to worry about other than their case. So that's one example of the way we collect information, but we want to collect all of the information that's available. And there are many sources of that, like, for example, we're working on an inbox integration. So any communications related to the case in the attorney's inbox get ingested into our system. We have integrations with third-party court document services. So any pleadings related to the case in the public sector get pulled in, and all of that information gets ingested into what is essentially a knowledge graph. So imagine a web of relationships that map out how all of the people in the case are connected, all of the accounts are connected, all of the assets are connected. For the first time, builds a holistic picture of that for the attorney and allows us to do some really powerful things that help the attorney. First and foremost, we can give the attorney a real-time summary of all that information. So, when the attorney goes to have a conversation with the client, they're not scrambling trying to remember, if this client has children or where they work or how long they were married. They can, much in the same way that your physician does just before they walk into the room before your checkup, they have essentially a patient chart that says, oh, here are the stats. As of this morning, here's all the information we have. And it allows the attorney to walk in and give a much better experience, give the impression that they know what's going on in this case. And that helps the client build confidence in them and feel supported. That's just one very simple example. A more complex example is our ability to surface an AI agent for the attorney that allows them to ask research questions in natural language. I use this example sometimes. The attorney could ask something like, how many times did my client's spouse travel to Miami between the months of January 2021 and April of 2025? And we can say, well, looks like there are 17 trips to Miami. Here are links to the credit card statements, with the ticket purchases. Here are the dates. Would you like to know where they eat when they're in Miami? It's instant results. Whereas, if you look at today's world, attorneys and paralegals are going line by line in credit card statements, copying, pasting transactions into a spreadsheet to build out those pictures of the situation. It takes a lot of time, costs a lot of money, and it's kind of tedious work. The attorneys don't want to do that. They want to be focusing on the law and strategy, not trying to find information.
Yeah, 100%. I what you described before and what you guys solve, I can't even imagine being an attorney and not having any type of a solution like this. I would have to have built something or done something to where there's no way, like you said. I mean, if you have X amount of clients versus thousands of documents, I mean, there's just no way you can do your job effectively and support that client. So,
Absolutely not. I mean, even one document, right? If I send you a tax return and it's 700 pages, you're not going to read it. You don't have time. And that's one single document. Yeah.
yeah, tax returns are not easy to read. There's so many different minute little things about it, especially, if you're not a CPA and not really, 100% used to like looking at them and digesting them every day. I mean, there's so many different lines on there that can get confusing and you kind of lose the translation. So yeah. All right. Well, awesome. I know you talked about a little bit about what your past was being in, kind of in the tech space, industry trends. Like, what are you seeing that are big shifts in legal tech and family law right now that you guys are, trying to adopt into?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Well, it's really interesting. If you look at the personal law industry, there are roughly 500,000 law firms in the United States. About 90% of them are 10 people or less. So it's very much a long tail of very small businesses. And those businesses have been historically very slow to adopt technology. Reason being, they're attorneys. They don't have technical staff. They don't have IT people standing by to do integrations. And traditional products required a lot of integration work. The beauty of what we're doing is that the systems today built on top of LLMs are very organic in the way that they ingest unstructured information, and there's very little integration to do. It's allowing these firms to embrace technology for the first time because we can go in an afternoon asking just a few questions about the way they practice in order to tune our system for them, and they're up and running. It's that simple, and it's opening a very large market to embrace technology like ours.
Absolutely. So you also did mention that you guys are, a year and a half old, but you're having great success so far. So what's working really well for you guys right now with like client acquisition and, just kind of the growth that you guys have experienced already?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. I'm a product person at heart. I've always been adjacent to sales and marketing, but never been running those parts of the business. So I'm learning a lot. And our strategy here is to be data driven and test, right? So we've got traditional sales people who are making calls. We're obviously focused on the web and the search engine optimization. We're using AI automations for platforms like LinkedIn to reach out to folks and connect there. It's a lot of just testing and probing to see what works. And Um, you know, our I would say our messaging is sort of unconventional, and it's maybe a culture that we have, but I think we don't come across as salesy. It's very personal, and we can do that because this whole business stems out of a real life, real world experience. It's my own, and it's very easy to tell that story and have people relate to it.
Yeah, I mean, if you have that unique proposition and that really, unique value, it's kind of easier to get your message across. And also you guys being niche down so specifically, that really helps as well. Cause I mean, if you're trying to be one thing to everyone, it's super hard, but you guys are super, hyper focused on, family law firms. I think that's really, really a good move. What struggles have you guys been having either in maybe lead generation or
Well, it is an area of growth, but it's fun. I'm not complaining about it at all. Ironically, one of the hardest parts of this is still product development, and it's probably more challenging than ever before. 5 years ago, in starting a software business, I could reach out to colleagues that had 10, 15, 20 years of software development experience. But when you're building a AI native product that it's built on all new technologies, there are no experts in this, right? The experts are all learning as they go, and for that reason, it's hard. It's slow going. You've got to invent as you go. You're figuring out how to integrate this tool and how to leverage that tool, and there are no best practices. You're creating the best practices as you. Not only that, as you can imagine, there's a tremendous demand for anyone who specializes in AI engineering, this kind of work. So it's very competitive. It's very expensive to hire good people, and that adds to the challenges of an early stage company.
yeah, absolutely. You mentioned, earlier, obviously we talked about your growth. So, you know, year one to, now, where do you guys see yourself in 6 to 12 months?
Absolutely. We've been staying very quiet for the first half of this journey. We're now just coming out. We've got quite a few customers that are in production on the platform, and that's informing our roadmap moving forward and validating everything that we've built thus far. Our next stage really is to accelerate our growth, start opening this up to broader and wider swaths of the industry. I think probably we'll have double digit growth numbers over the next 3 4 years. And um, everything that I've seen thus far leads me to believe that's a very reasonable goal for us to have.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I think that your product, obviously, anything that streamlines and helps someone be more efficient in their business and really kind of help that customer experience is super valuable. What for anyone that's trying to grow a business or kind of start a startup, what advice do you have for them?
Well, it takes bravery and the ability to listen to yourself and have confidence in what you believe and see. I think a lot of people have great ideas. The gating factor is really their willingness to trust in themselves and actually push them through to fruition. And that's the key, right? Having an idea, not just an idea, but then saying I'm going to do this, and it doesn't matter how hard it is. In fact, it's fun. It's not hard. It's the fear of maybe getting it wrong or fear of failure that holds people back. And I think that's it's a personal journey for a lot of people, and you get through that, you can do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if a law firm is listening or anyone maybe that's, adjacent to that industry and, wants your help installing this into their business, kind of how do they find you and what's the best way to, get in contact?
I'd love to hear from them. Best thing to do right now would be to go to our website, www.deliberately.ai. We've got a sign up form there for our trial, and we'll get back to you as soon as we hear from you and set up a call. I can take you through the product, our plans, and show you how it'll help.
Well, it was really nice speaking with you today and thanks for joining the podcast.
Thanks so much, Alex. Appreciate it.